Welcome to Spinning Back Clique each week here at MMA Junkie. We take a quick spin through the biggest headlines in the sport. This week it is the Battle of Sudamerica. We've got Danny Segura with us, as well as Gorgeous George and Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. So let's just jump right into it, gentlemen. Now listen, however it makes you feel inside, there's no question that the most discussed fight in combat sports this past weekend was Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. Now, it was every bit the spectacle we anticipated, but in the end, Paul scored a first-round TKO over the former Bellator and one champ. The event was chaos from start to finish, but tell me one lesson you learned from this fight, whether it be about Ben Askren, whether it be about Jake Paul, whether it be about the sport itself. What was the one thing you walked away learning from this fight? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Have at it, Danny.
To be honest, I didn't learn a whole lot. I knew that a close to 40-year-old Ben Askren who's coming off a hip surgery shouldn't have been involved in any type of combat sports, whether that's MMA or boxing. I already knew that Jake Paul doesn't get the credit he deserves, and he's actually a decent boxer and nowhere close to a real professional. But the man's very athletic. He puts in the work, and he knows the basics behind boxing. And what else? I already knew that the casuals were sort of interested in more of a spectacle rather than actual display of technique. I guess the only new thing that I really learned, to be quite honest, I kind of liked Pete Davidson before this, but after this whole show, I couldn't have disliked the guy more. I think he was extremely terrible throughout the entire broadcast. That's about it. That was my biggest lesson out of that whole spectacle.
Yeah, for me, it just proves that boxing is pretty simple, but it's phenomenal because it can sell at all levels, whether it's two celebs, two amateurs, foxy boxing, a pillow fight, you name it, or the best prize fighters on the planet. You'll tune in if there's a good storyline as well. They did a good job with a fight. I think it was Fournier against Raycon, two guys fighting over a chick because of something that happened at a nightclub or something, but they said it enough times that I was in, so maybe that was just a reinforcement of a good story. The call-outs at the end, same thing. The proper build-up, we don't get this every week, so I can stomach 2 of those per year, but that was about it. How about you, Goes?
The one thing I walked away from all of this, guys, is it had nothing to do with MMA, and it had nothing to do with boxing. A lot of us had it pinned as boxing versus MMA. It really wasn't that. It was about the individuals themselves. Had Ben Askren won, we wouldn't have done a victory lap because it really just didn't mean anything, guys, at the end of the day. So you can't take anything away from Jake Paul and his performance. That was great, but he still has no wins over boxers in boxing. How does that make any sense?
Great points all the way around, guys. I was not expecting Pete Davidson to take a hit, but well done there, Danny.
Sucks, man. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, as a whole, Triller Fight Club was like nothing we've ever seen before, man. It was part music festival, part sporting event, part absolute shit show. I mean, this was an assault on the senses from start to finish. So what did you think of the product as a whole once it was all said and done? I mean, they're coming back in June. Are you signing up for the next event? Let's break it down. Love it or hate it? Triller Fight Club edition. Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. George, you can get it started.
Can I love to hate it? Oh, man. I kind of gave my answer away because I could stomach 2 per year, guys, but that's about it. But, like I say, I think they did enough to give this Generation X guy some Generation X. I got Snoop Dogg, Ric Flair, Al Bernstein. So they were tossing things my way saying, come on, tune in. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a train wreck. But I mean, who's going to turn away from one of those, right? So, yeah, I only want a couple per year. I don't know if I'll tune into the next one. But, what was really, really important was them call-outs afterwards. So if T. Wood or BJ Penn's involved against Jake Paul, I want to see that YouTuber get his ass kicked. But I'll give him credit because I doubted him before this fight. Goes, what'd you think, man?
I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I hated me for being entertained. I was actually entertained, but I was entertained in a different way. I was entertained for all the wrong reasons. It was very similar to what we do when we scroll through like Instagram or Facebook. You're scrolling through, you see some fight news, you stop for a second because you see somebody get slapped and you go, I'm going to watch this for a second. Then you see an artist come on, you see a song and you go, I'm going to watch this. And then all of a sudden a fight breaks out. I was watching it for all the wrong reasons. And this platform is just a beef squasher to me, guys. So I would probably tune in, but if I went to one of your guys' house.
Pete Davidson sucks. I think they did a lot of terrible things about this event. I think they can clean it up more. I think even though I didn't like it, I do think there's a big market for this, and they just need to clean it up a little bit more. The interviews seemed forced. A lot of things didn't flow. They just need to make it a little bit tighter, a little bit more professional. But I do think they're onto something, and I think they can be successful just as long as Pete Davidson is not on that broadcast.
This is the definition. This is the definition of guilty pleasure, I guess, is what we're saying. And by the way, I can't believe none of you talked about the quality broadcasting of Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, maybe the UFC could look into bringing him on board, really kind of bring some depth to the broadcast moving forward. All right, listen, well, believe it or not, there were other fights this weekend. Robert Whittaker picked up a clear-cut and impressive decision win over Kelvin Gastelum in the main event of UFC on ESPN 22. It looks like he's in the driver's shot for another shot at the title. Adesanya definitively won that fight the first time around. So tell me, guys, why would it be any different this time around? Or are you just expecting a repeat performance of what we saw the first time? It looks like he's next. How's it going to play out? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Get it started.
I think Bobby Knuckles has all the momentum right now. I mean, look, if you look at what happened to Israel Adesanya, he's got to kind of rebuild himself. Granted, it was in another weight class, but he's got to shed that. He's one of the most intelligent fighters, so I know that he will. But this time around, I think Robert Whittaker is going to want to mix things up a little bit, make adjustments. We didn't really see that in the first fight. I think he's changed a lot as a fighter here, not just physically, but mentally. So I also expect Israel Adesanya to do the same things. There's a reason why he's been champ for so long. So we hear fighters talk about what it's like to get that first loss, and a little bit of pressure comes off their shoulders. I think Israel Adesanya is going to be okay in this rematch, but I do think it's going to be a different fight. What do you think, Danny?
I think so, and I think you're onto something here. I think mentally for the first fight, he wasn't there. We saw a Robert Whittaker that was somewhat out of character and was this angry person, and that's not who he is at all. I think that definitely played a factor as well. Granted, I think when he stepped in there, he was 100%, but mentally, I don't think he was all there. Will that be enough to dethrone Israel Adesanya? I don't know, but I do think now he has a higher chance. Why? We just saw some great wrestling against Kelvin Gastelum, something we hadn't seen a whole lot of before. And I think in this rematch, we just saw not so long ago Israel Adesanya lose to Jan Blachowicz because of wrestling. Now, I know obviously Robert Whittaker and Jan Blachowicz don't have the same stature, and there's a big weight difference there. But still, I think there are some holes that were exposed in that bout, and I think Whittaker does have some skills to exploit that a little bit. So I'm going to go with still going to go with Adesanya here, but I think Whittaker has a better shot.
I agree with all the points, and I was exactly going to say the same thing. Wrestling. I think we saw it make a difference in both guys' last fights. However, maybe this will benefit Izzy because he knows he has to plug up that hole and shore things up right there. So maybe that'll give a little bit more of a lift for him as he prepares for this fight. But, I still want to see it.
I agree. That's what it all boils down to, right, George? I want to see it, man. That's the fight I want to see right now. So, all right, guys. On Friday, it was Bellator 257. Vadim Nemkov, Corey Anderson each punched their ticket to the semifinal round of Bellator's light heavyweight Grand Prix. Ryan Bader, of course, is already there as well. So we've got 3/4 of the semifinal bracket all filled out. Does any of those guys hold the inside track towards winning the tournament, or do we have to just sit back and wait until we see Anthony Johnson versus Yoel Romero before we can even try to break down the semifinal round of this tournament? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Danny, get it started.
I think we might have to wait a little bit because, look, I think there are some players that have looked great. I kind of thought that Ryan Bader, to be honest, after that loss to Vadim Nemkov, wasn't looking so great, but now all of a sudden he just had a brutal performance against Lyoto Machida, and that ground and pound looked vicious. Corey Anderson looked good as well, but Ryan Bader all of a sudden kind of changed my mind. I thought he was kind of maybe over the hill, but I really don't think so. And Vadim Nemkov also looked good against Phil Davis, who's a veteran. But we cannot forget about Yoel Romero. How will he look at 205 pounds? Maybe he goes out there and is actually a better fighter than 185. We know his weight cuts were kind of brutal. Also, we haven't seen Anthony Johnson in quite some time, but that power, is always the last thing to go. So maybe if he just puts away the man that nobody has been able to put away, all of a sudden, I think he becomes the favorite. So I think there are some interesting players right now, but a bit too soon to tell.
I was deciphering this thing as well. Bader gets an extra week. Anderson had less cage time than the other two. Romero and AJ get to fight for a belt, which was what Davis did this past weekend. So that's some nice incentive. Bader and Anderson don't have to face the winner of AJ versus Romero. So these are fine little points. But honestly, this thing is unfolding really, really nice. Everybody has a great shot at it. Bravo to Bellator for pulling it off. And it looks like we can get it all within 6 months, 6 to 9 months, which is a big benefit. Maybe Go sees it different. I don't know.
I think we have to wait a little bit because here we can't really rely on resume too much, right? We haven't seen these guys in a while. What is Yoel Romero going to look like at that weight class? Anthony Johnson, has he been away too long? There's a lot of question marks. So in my opinion, I think right now, Ryan Bader is probably in that driver's seat just because you got to remember throughout his lifetime, he's done these type of things. College wrestling, The Ultimate Fighter. He's been in a Grand Prix before. He's done all these type of things. His body's conditioned for it. I think right now he has the inside track, but you can't count out those last two.
Listen, solid analysis from everybody, but all I want to do, I just want to hear Danny say Joel Romero.
Joel Romero.
Fantastic. All right, guys, look, this week it's a full crowd in the building in Jacksonville, Florida for a blockbuster UFC 261. 3 UFC titles are on the line. Listen, Kamaru Usman, Valentina Shevchenko, Zhang Weili, they're all very, very impressive champions, but I want to hear how the challengers can pull off the upset. So each of you make a case for one of the challengers. I'm going to give George the luxury of going first. Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Get it started.
Well, I'm going to go with Rose Namajunas. I'm going to bet Rose Namajunas. I can't believe she's plus money. I think she's just proven herself over and over again. She's far and beyond in the strawweight division, has the nicest hands, the nicest footwork. She knows how to use the range. She's so calm and composed. And she got a nice blueprint from Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who took Zhang Weili 5 rounds. I mean, Zhang Weili is, for a while there, we were thinking she's indestructible, but no, I mean, she can be touched and put down. So I really like her chances. On the ground, she can hold her own as well. But I think this thing is going to be contested on the feet. And like I say, I think Rose is years ahead of everybody else. So give me some Rose on Saturday. Goes?
I think the fight starts today for Jorge Masvidal. I think he's going to have to use a little bit of mind games in this fight. It's a different environment for him. He's going to have a more camp, more time to prepare. I expect him to sprawl and brawl, but I think he can use the crowd to his advantage. I think he can maybe get into Kamaru Usman's head because there really aren't too many things he could do. If you watch that first fight, he was dominated by that wrestling, and I don't know if enough time has gone by where he could have shored that up, but I want him to be in a low stance, and I want to see a better fight, so I think he's got to get a little dirty out there. And also, I don't know if Pete Davidson's a good guy. What do you think, Danny?
Don't get me started. I'm done there. But look, I'll say this about Jessica Andrade fighting Valentina Shevchenko. It's tough to make an argument against Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, she's just as dominant as the champ that we see in the weight classes above. It's really hard to dethrone her. But look, if I had to choose somebody around those divisions, not counting obviously the champ Amanda Nunes, I'm gonna go with Jessica Andrade. She's got power. She's got wrestling. We saw wrestling gave a little bit of trouble in Shevchenko's last bout against Jennifer Maia. Let's not forget, Andrade folded Caitlin Chookagian with a nasty body shot. I mean, she's got a chance here. I mean, we talk about puncher's chance. With Jessica Andrade, that becomes a big chance. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, making a case against Valentina Shevchenko so tough. I'm not even going to bust Danny for going over the clock there, man. So listen, tough assignment. First time we're going to have a sold-out crowd in 13 months. I'm looking forward to it. Bellator taking the week off, but we will have UFC. We got ONE. We got PFL. Man, if you want to go further, we got LFA. We got KSW. It's always a busy week in mixed martial arts, and we'll talk about it all next week on Spinning Back Clique.